Morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started momentarily. Commissioners, there's a couple things to start us off today. Before we get to our agenda items, I'm going to turn the floor and microphone over to our city manager, who's going to call up our chief to just give us an update on this past week and where we are today as we enter another storm. But then also just remind everyone that Commissioner O'Connor is out of town today, so he won't be here throughout the day. And then a reminder also that I'll be leaving this afternoon to go to Lansing, and so tonight's meeting will be chaired by our president of the commission, Commissioner Kelly. Okay. So I'll turn it over to our city manager, who, like so many staff here throughout our city, have been working pretty much 24 hours a day to respond to what some are referring to as the polar vortex. But I think, we can probably come up with a name of our own. So City Manager Mark Washington.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
It is with great appreciation that I want to commend the staff, those staff that were deemed necessary to respond to the emergency, formerly known as essential staff. I want to thank all of the departments. I don't want to call by name because I may, in the essence of acknowledging everyone, because it was such a team effort, be remiss in mentioning them. But as you mentioned, Mayor, it took a tremendous amount of resources from many of our departments to make sure that our city was safe and that our community was able to recover from the unfortunate inclement weather that we experienced last week, and it seems that we may continue to do so. But we also want to express our appreciation to the state in their partnership, as well as the other communities that responded, Wyoming and Kalamazoo and Ann Arbor, for also their assistance and providing resources in recovery. And I do want to acknowledge consumers for the work that they have done in terms of trying to restore our community back to normalcy. This morning, our fire chief is going to give us a real brief situational update on where we stand in the operations. I want to thank him for his work, especially in helping us in the Emergency Operations Center when we activated it last week. And there are other departments that are here, and so that I want to make sure you see some of the men and women who were part of the response. So if you're here and you were part of the operation, would you please stand? Thank you. There may be some that need to come and assist the chief in his response.
Thank you very much. So when we have this was a predictable weather event, so we had forewarning of this event, and in those types of events, we're able to prepare to a certain extent. And I know that all divisions within the city kind of had that heads up that we were going to have an icing event. We at the fire department prepared, as well as other divisions out there. We experienced what we did on Wednesday, Tuesday night into Wednesday, and that was significant in itself. And then we knew we were going to get hit again on Thursday. And so we go into this very rapid response mode, and then we become resource depleted. At about 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, we could tell that this was going to be an impactful event to our area more than anywhere else around us. We could see that we were going to need additional help in order to manage this event. And so at 11 o'clock, we were able to open our Emergency Operations Center. Throughout that day, we were what I would say resource depleted throughout the city, and mainly dealing with a lot of power outages, wires down, and also limbs and trees coming down around the city. So it was imperative that we be able to clear our roadways to allow for response around the city, provide for the protection of those people that were without power, and then work with consumers and all other divisions to try and get us back into a state where we could respond. We did that through Thursday. We also opened sheltering centers in the city, so a tremendous amount of help was given to us through Grand Rapids Public Schools, in Ottawa Hills and Union to open those shelters. We had close coordination with our friends at the Kent County EOC, and so we were definitely collaborating on a lot of different levels. We did have a tremendous amount of support from the state in our region coordinators, and Lieutenant Yonkers is here from the state police with us today to continue to assist us in our efforts as we look at recovery. As we go through Friday and into Saturday, we were at a stabilization phase, but also a realization of kind of assessing our damage, and restoration of power was definitely on the forefront. We worked closely with consumers, and by Sunday morning, we were down to less than 20 homes without any power. Just to put that in perspective, at any given hour of the day within our city, we have a couple hundred people without power because of various reasons. And so it was only because of all the resources that were in town that got us to that point. Now we are in a recovery stage. It was because of the disaster declaration that was made by the mayor and then also by the governor that we're at a place right now where we were able to bring in outside resources to assist us with this recovery stage. And that's kind of how we're operating right now. But I would like to give David the opportunity to update us on where we are with that recovery, and we'll do that very briefly so you can get on with your meeting.
Thanks,
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Mayor, City Manager, and Commissioners. We started off last week with well over 300 work orders in the categories of high priority, medium priority, and low priority. There were several streets, major streets and minor residential streets that were blocked or partially blocked. Those are now all cleared of debris. We're working with just a little over 100 open work orders at this point as of this morning. Many of those are just debris pickup, nothing that is majorly blocked or hindering people getting around our city at this point. I do want to commend our Park Superintendent and City Forester, Joe Sulak and Dan Coy. It's not every day that you have 2 to 3 times the amount of staff showing up at your garage looking for direction. Those two have handled that with a coolness and a methodology I think that is admirable and worth replicating around the city. So thank you for your support, and our thanks to the partners in the state for their support as well.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner. I just want to remind the community that we typically this time of the year, the yard waste facility is closed, but we open 7 days a week from 9 in the morning to 6 p.m. So if you have the ability to, it's going to be open into further notice. We will notify the community when it's closed again, but for now, you can, if you have the ability to do that, you can bring the material to the site, and you can take as many trips as you want. It's not limited in the amount that you can bring to the site. And we encourage the community not only to take care of what you have, but if you have your neighbor that doesn't have a utility trailer and you can assist, we ask you to do that. We are also going, as David mentioned, within the next couple of weeks and picking up any brush pile that is remaining on the city right away. Any major blockage on any of the street or any of that has been addressed. This is just the remaining, which is considered not a risk to the community. But we ask the community to, if they have the ability to bring this to the yard waste facility, do that. It's open 7 days a week from 9 in the morning to 6 p.m.
Thanks, Tom. So Commissioners, I know I spoke with all of you on Saturday, but I'll say it again publicly. I was able to be down at the Emergency Operating Center on Saturday and seeing the coordinated effort and everyone coming together and our partners at the state and at consumers really working to make sure that we were responding to the immediate crisis calls that came in, but also coming up with a plan for storm recovery was incredibly impressive. I think we have a lot to be proud of in our community, just how everyone came together, not just within the city, but all of our partners at GRPS and the Rapid and our nonprofit organizations, Red Cross, Kids Food Basket, who was working hard to make sure that families had food. It really was a community effort to respond, to make sure that everyone was safe and that we were helping one another and take care of one another. And then I do want to say a big thank you to the governor. Her office has been tremendous. The state's been incredible. Their support really helped us accelerate the cleanup. On Sunday when we were here, I was told by noon we had 5 or 6 crews coming in, which, to give you a sense of what that meant, it meant we tripled the number of crews out in the community that could help with cleanup, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without the governor's support. And then I was flooded with calls from mayors across the state asking how they could help. And, you know, it really just shows the community spirit that exists not in our city, but really across the state. So I want to personally say thank you to everyone who came together to help our community get through. And I believe we're in a good place, hopefully. The storms that are coming and brewing and coming our way will not result in so much damage. So thank you. City Manager, anything else to add?
None, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So now it'll take us to our agenda, and we have another special guest with us this morning, and that is our very own president of GVSU, President Haas. So colleagues, you probably remember, every year we give an opportunity to our key partners to come and give us an update on their state of affairs within their organization. Grand Valley is a key partner in our community in many ways, and so we wanted to provide this opportunity to President Haas, even though he will be transitioning to a new journey soon, in June, right? You're here till summer? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, so welcome, President.
Well, thank you. And I think I went back, I think this might be my 10th address with this group, and I do appreciate it. So Mayor and Commissioners and Manager and others here as well. And also, in many regards, I want to recognize Eric and Susan and Greg Sundstrom before, and all the other staff members who have made the connectivity between the university and the city a very, very productive one through my years. I had an epiphany probably about that same time, 10 years ago, that at the university, we are an urban campus for Grand Rapids. That we have our, of course, traditional campus out in Allendale, and we have some centers across the state, but we had to, in fact, act differently, be differently, to support the needs of our community and be good neighbors. And I think that that was an epiphany that I had, and I know that others on my staff really echo that. The partnership, as the mayor just pointed out, is critical for us to achieve mission. Our mission as a university and the mission of the city in producing a living and working and learning environment that we all want to be proud of, and I think we are. I know I am, because this is home for me. So here's just a couple of data points that I wrote down that I thought you might be interested in. And also, I gave you 3 handouts. One is an economic impact for the Tri-County region. Then our accountability report, which is now 11th, and I'll put this out transparently. No other university does this in the state of Michigan, where we measure ourselves according to some standards, and we have some longitudinals that are in there as well. Just as a side note to that, we had our reaccreditation visit in November. Every 10 years, the Higher Learning Commission comes, they're over in Chicago, comes with a team, and we did receive a preliminary report that we have met or surpassed all the standards and all the components for reaccreditation, which means that in April we should get a good to go for another 10 years. And that I'm very proud of. In fact, our ratios are better now than they were 10 years ago when we look at our financials. So that was really good to report. And I thought just for your reading enjoyment, I wrote an essay at the start of this academic year called Leading Change. And the essence of this was all about stewardship. And I thought you might enjoy that as well. So here's a couple of points of reference that you might want to take into account. And we continue to invest as a university in Grand Rapids in our engineering, our nursing, our health professions, and business and other places as well. We have recently completed the Raleigh J. Finkelstein Hall, 80,000 square feet, $35 million of investment. The Daniel and Pamela DeVos in professional health is coming out of the ground, and that's 160,000 square feet, $70 million of investment, and we got $30 million back from the state because they viewed us and Grand Rapids as a good investment site as well. We have a parking ramp in partnership with Spectrum. That's a $50 million investment for 1,200 cars that we're going to take away from the neighbors, which again, that's something that we've been always talking about too. And finally, the old Ferris nut facility here in Grand Rapids, we purchased some time ago. We have the Innovation Design Center for Engineering and the DTE Electromagnetic Compatibility Lab, plus space for GRPS and other schools to do FIRST robotics and other opportunities that are going to come from that particular space. That's all in is about a $10 million. So you add that up and it comes to real dollars. investing here in the state, in the city of Grand Rapids to help us achieve our mission. Other things that I think are critically important is when the mayor and I spoke early on in her time as mayor, what about outreach to the community for our students? And we have done that to the start of the academic year now as well. It's just not Grand Valley, but I think all the universities, and we have good relationships with all of GE and the community college and others, that we can come together and really demonstrate what the city has to offer our new students, and hopefully at the end of the day they might see themselves right here, staying right here in Grand Rapids. In fact, if I look at the economic impact, you'll see that here. We have about $800 million per year of economic impact, about 11,000 jobs that are created because of that. And if we add our alums to that mix in the Tri-County region, we have an impact of $2.6 billion in this part of the state. So just for instance, here in Grand Rapids, there are 17,047 alumni living here in Grand Rapids. In the Tri-County region, it's 52,000 plus, and that's out of the 116,000 alums that we have all together. By the way, 50 years ago, we had about 200 alums total. Wow. So, and I have shaken, by the way, of the 116,000, I've shaken hands with half of them.
Wow. And gotten a selfie with most.
And selfies, too. we do continue the toast with tea Haas. So. We have continued the outreach with GRPS, with the museum school. I'm very proud of that relationship, and so many others as well. With our enrollment, just to give you a case of this, in the last 10 years, we've increased our enrollment by 8%. When I was hired, the board says, let's make sure that we grow smartly. And I defined that between 0 and 1% year over year, because we couldn't continue the 3 to 5% rate that I inherited. But what's really wonderful about that is, as we grew by 8%, the number of graduates went up by 40% over that same period of time. And 86% are staying right here in Michigan to work as well. Let's see, in terms of students, from Grand Rapids, we have over 1,500 students studying at Grand Valley, 330 from GRPS, and the Tri-County region, almost 7,000. So I think that those numbers just illustrate the type of impact we're making, but we couldn't do it without the great support that we get from you all and your staff as we move forward as a university. And as the mayor said, I'm going to be retiring, actually transitioning. I'm going to still stay in the area. When Marcia and I bought a home, this is home for us, as I mentioned early on. And we want to make sure that our kids and grandkids can come and enjoy Grand Rapids as we continue our lives. To do a little teaching, a little help with development, and again, call this home. One other person I want to recognize, and she's not here, but Pat Waring is one of those individuals that on my staff really understood that epiphany that we both had. And she had that well before me. When she was working on the west side, she was working in Belknap. She is just a remarkable person, and I'm so proud that she's able to interact with you all here in the city of Grand Rapids. So that concludes my report, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. I'll turn to my colleagues. Commissioners, any questions?
Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you for a job well done.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I too want to congratulate you, Tom, and thank you so much for all the work that you did with us. Certainly, the Second Ward engaged Grand Valley more recently in the last few years, and it's just great, the relationship that we've had. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
I'd just like to echo the same sentiments. Thank you so much for, so turn that off. Thank you so much for all of the work, all of the partnerships, and I think this community is a better place because of your service. And I wish you and Marcia the best in your next chapter, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you around in a lot of places.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate you, and I really appreciate you mentioning Pat Waring. To your point, I can't say enough about the job that Pat did in terms of not just her ability to facilitate, but just the power of presence that she had, and her commitment to or trying her best to understand or empathize with those who were being affected with the change that was taking place. So thank you to Pat as well as to Scott Richardson. I know that he's retiring as well. So thank you. Appreciate you, sir.
And
Well,
please
as
thank
we,
your board.
Thank you. I'm waiting for a phone call because our daughter's going to have our first grandson here shortly. Over in Chicago to go with the 5 granddaughters. So we looked ahead and noted our health is good, the university is in great shape, and I will attest right now that I think we have a very, very fine individual, Philomena Mantella. It will be coming on board on the 1st of July. I've already spent some time with her. I think the university is in great hands, and she is in her portfolio an individual that has connected with public-private partnerships in her entire career to date. And I think that you will enjoy working with her, and I, in turn, will share the efforts that we created together with you all and the university as well. But I'm thrilled with the decision of the board bringing someone of her caliber to Grand Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And President Haas, one more thing before you go, I'll add my thanks, but I also have the privilege really to see a number of things that you have worked on and helped make happen in our community in addition to everything you shared today. And I just want to make sure I say thank you also for your leadership with the Laker line, which is a huge asset in our community, bringing millions and millions of dollars, federal dollars, to our community to assist with expanding our bus rapid transit. And that was largely able to happen because of Grand Valley's commitment. So thank you also for that, in addition to everything else you've done in the community. You've been a tremendous leader, a great partner, and we will all look forward to celebrating with you this summer as you say goodbye to this chapter and open up a new one. So
Thank you very
thank
much.
you. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right, Commissioners, that will take us to our second item today, which is an action item. Before this is a resolution approving a request for myself, Commissioner Kelly, and Commissioner Jones to attend the MML Capital Conference in March. Before I call the question, I know I emailed all of you, but I just want to confirm one more time that no one else is able to go? No? Okay. All right. We'll also have some city staff attending that as well. I know the city manager will be there, and then a number of other key staff. So with that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution scheduling a special meeting of the City Commission to be held on February 26th from 1:30 to 3:30 right here in our chambers. And this is for the purpose of strategic planning. So can I get a motion?
Support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. And similar to last time, I'm sure the city manager will send us materials ahead of time, but it'll be structured similar to the last two that we had. All right, next that will take us to a resolution authorizing an agreement between the city and We Care Denali to provide compost operations and management services at 2001 Butterworth, or as we affectionately call it, Domtar.
So moved.
Support.
All right, James, you want to tell us about this? I feel like we've talked about composting in the city for
We have.
years.
It's, for me personally, it's taken a long time to get to this point. We've been talking about it for years, Mayor, you're absolutely right. Let me just start out by saying, the attached resolution would authorize an agreement with We Care Denali, provide compost operations and management services at 2001 Butterworth, as the mayor indicated, for not to exceed amounts of $550,000 for the first year and $400,000 for each year thereafter, with an initial term of 3 years, with an option to renew for 2 additional 3-year terms. I can't tell you how pleased I am to be standing here in front of you on this topic. It's been a long road for me. And you heard the Domtar site is open. I'm going to tell you a little bit about sort of the history here, and I have representatives here from We Care Denali. If you have any questions, and I'm sure they'd like to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their company, because I think this is going to be a great arrangement for us. You recall back in the fall, we came before you and talked about the repurposing of Domtar. This is a piece of property that we purchased back in 1992 for use with a number of city operations. It's a 76-acre site, and currently has a home for yard waste collection and storage, disposal of utility dig-up material, forestry tree removal, wood chips, we have a tree grove there, and we also have a fire department training facility. The Department of Public Works is committed to improving the sustainability of our community and can contribute to this initiative in the operation of a compost facility. Industry studies have shown that 40 to 50% of the material that is either being landfilled or going to an incinerator is compostable. That's a big issue I think I want to emphasize, Mayor. That means that's material that we could take out of the waste stream that's currently either going in our landfills or being incinerated. That's mainly organic material. If we were only to take 10% of that, we could save up to $100,000 on our tipping fees at the waste energy facility. That's a key point. I want to make sure that you recognize that. Once the site operations are up and running and stable, we would like to further explore the possibility of further sustainability with food waste, either from residential and or commercial. I get requests quite frequently for businesses looking for places to compost. There really isn't a lot of options in West Michigan. The facility that we're using right now for our own purposes is out in Zeeland. I know the county's looking at some things, but they're still several years out before they could get things up and running. And this site would be ideal for that. Additional compost could prove to reduce our CO2 emissions, methane, instead of burying it and burning the material. The site that we have is a wonderful asset for our community. We've seen a 40% increase in material being brought there, and you heard about it today. We just cannot keep up with what we're coming in the door, and all we're doing is transferring it to another location at a pretty significant cost. We estimate we're getting about 40 to 50,000 yards a year, and as a transfer station, we're far exceeding what that requirement is for the DEQ. We talked with you last fall. We knew we needed to do something. The city has historically contracted the grinding and hauling of yard waste material with a private contractor to a registered site. But as I mentioned, is given the amount of material that we're receiving, transitioning to a registered site really is our most feasible option. We will work with the DEQ as we transition to a registered site. It's very common. We've done a lot of research the last couple of years. It's common for municipalities to enter into a third-party agreement to have somebody run the compost operation. As part of the next step, we issued an RFP. That was issued in August of 2018. 5 companies expressed interest in our proposal. They were Cocoa Corporation, Constructors, Inc., Spurt Industries, Synagro, and We Care Denali. Some local, some nationally known. A proposal review committee was assembled that represented a number of stakeholders. We wanted to make sure that we had everybody's interest involved as we reviewed these proposals. We had Sue Ann Wieringa from purchasing, Jeff McCall from engineering, Joe Sulak from Parks and Forestry, Bill Kaiser from Environmental Services, Bob Swain from Public Works, and myself. We also sought out input from Dan Schoonemaker from the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. The committee rated proposals based on the RFP criteria, and we conducted initial interviews of the top 4 proposers in November. We brought it down to 2 companies, Cocoa Corporation and We Care Denali. We brought back both companies for second interviews in late December. After those second interviews, we did further due diligence and research. We communicated with our sustainability manager, Allison Sutter, Managing Director Tom Almonte, Chief Financial Officer Jeff Dode on these 2 finalists. Based on all the feedback and research that we did, it was a unanimous support that was in the best interest of the city to enter an agreement with We Care Denali as a selected proposer and negotiate agreement. A couple of key points of their proposal. They would be charging the city $26.50 a ton for yard waste delivered to the site. Now, that's not only coming from residents, but all the city operations that are coming in there. They would look at a revenue sharing with the city. I think this is a key point, Mayor, I want to mention. So for everything that comes into the site and they sell, they would refund, or they would have a revenue sharing with the city of $1 per yard for everything they sell. That's substantial as well. I think that could turn into some offsetting of the cost. And if we do allow for them to bring in outside material that's not coming from either city operations or city residents, they would share with that with us at $2 a ton of whatever comes in the door. You know, there's some site restrictions we may have, so we're going to be working through that with them as we try to develop the site. And if we're going to allow, because we do get requests from outside landscapers, outside communities, outside partners that want to bring material to us, and this would afford us the ability to help cover some of that cost. We Care Denali has estimated their annual operating cost to be approximately $506,000. As I talked about the yards that are coming in the door, if you calculate that down to from a yard to a ton, I know I wrote a little conversion in my memo. The cost for the city for the tipping fee of the material that we're estimating is coming in the door is going to be about $331,000. Presently, the cost that we're paying right now to grind and haul this material away is averaging about $400,000 to $450,000 a year. And then if you roll in all the other operating costs with some of our own personnel, and we've got a security guard out there, the operation's running about $600,000 per year. The site currently has about 65,000 yards on location that need to be addressed. That's one of the things that's the first year would have a higher cost. So We Care would come in and grind that material up and begin the composting operation with that material that's already there. We Care Denali will market their finished product to the West Michigan area. And for, like I mentioned, every yard that's sold, they'll return $1 back to the city. One of the key components we had in our RFP was that they would provide material to our residents at no charge. Compost material for your garden, for your yard, whatever it might be, they've agreed to do up to 1,000 yards for residents, as well as 1,000 yards for city operations. Now, that's something we can negotiate if we find that 1,000 is not enough, but I think it's a great opportunity for our residents to share in this life cycle of yard waste, if you will. So to kind of summarize, the tipping fee at $331,000, a rebate of potentially $38,000, the net annual cost, if you take out that first year additional expense for the material on site, we're looking at annual operating costs of about $293,000. I think this is a win-win. Like I said, I'm very excited where we're at, and I think we have a partnership with We Care Denali that's known nationally and has the expertise and can really help us move this to the next level. There's some site work that needs to happen. They have a partner as part of their proposal, RRS, which is out of Ann Arbor. They've been doing this work for over 20 years as far as designing locations for composting. We have to have a pad for the material to be on. We have to have a pond, most likely, that is lined. We have some access roads to work through out there. And we're trying to work through what that cost looks like. Preliminarily, it's probably going to be in the range of $400,000 to $500,000 expense to get it up and running. There is a grant opportunity, I might add, that the DEQ has out there for this type of potential operation that we will be submitting for, and hopefully, if we're successful, the cost to get this started really will be minimal on our side. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I would ask Mike Nicholson from We Care Denali to give you a little update, just so you can put a face with a name. Maybe you can tell you a little bit about who We Care Denali really is.
Great,
Mike?
thank you. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. We're excited to be here. It's been a long road. I'd like to, Don here? Yep. This is Don Butinsky. Don is he's the manager of the City of Ann Arbor's composting facility. He joined us in 2011 and has been operating Ann Arbor since we've been here. My name is Mike Nicholson. I'm Senior Vice President of Development and Technology for Denali Water Solutions. I was actually the original developer of the Ann Arbor project as well, and have been involved with it since. So I have led the development for the efforts here in Grand Rapids, and I will be your liaison moving forward to the development of facilities, as well as the what we're calling the initial cleanup, potentially interim operations, and then taking over the facility once it's designed. Let me introduce a little bit about Denali Water Solutions. We are a national organics management company. Our customers are both municipalities as well as industry. We focus on the recycling, conversion, and beneficial use and sustainable practices of organics throughout the United States. We operate in 34 states roughly over 650 employees with the annual revenues. And it kind of depends upon which companies you're talking about, because there's several, but over $185 million in annual sales as far as the size of the company is concerned. We're very excited to be here. I think that this is really going to lay out a lot like Ann Arbor did. They initially, when we took that over, they were processing predominantly yard waste and wood waste. And then once we got that up and operating and under control, right size, the size of the facility, then we looked at going to residential food waste. So now we collect all the residents' food waste with their kitchen compost or kitchen catcher. So we're taking post-consumer residential food waste in Ann Arbor. And if you go chase that around the country, there aren't many communities doing that. And so it is very exciting, and it's very successful. We have a very educated community, and we have very low levels of contamination. The next thing that the City of Ann Arbor is looking at right now is they're also looking at post-consumer commercial, so collecting the downtown restaurants and businesses producing post-consumer food waste. So we've been through one component to it, we're going to the next, and I think this sounds very similar to the objectives and aspirations of the city of Grand Rapids. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but I just tell you, we're very excited to be here, and we look forward to the next steps.
All right, thank you, Mike. I'm going to turn to my colleagues to see if they have some questions
Great.
for any of you. So I'll open it, Commissioner?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to thank you, James. I know that you've been working at this for years. Ever since I've been on the commission, we've been talking about composting. So I do have a question about our residents composting, and I just got back not long ago from a city that's doing this. So they have, under their sinks, they've got their recycle, their trash, and their composting bins. And then even encouraging you to just continue to move forward with your innovations, James. I mean, I understand that there are communities that actually do a lot with reuse and salvaging, and they even have sales for their communities to get them to stop putting everything in the landfill and allow people to go shopping for some of this. So we're on the path. It's not an easy road, as you know. You've been on it for a long time, but really, really pleased, and just wondering what the next steps are for you in terms of our residents and their composting needs.
Yeah.
So the initial thought, Commissioner, was the collection would be done as part of yard waste. If we were going to start moving into curbside organics collection, that's how most communities move that direction. I would see potentially a pilot to see how it worked, work out through some of the details, how it works operationally, before we would start doing a large-scale curbside collection. In the wintertime, it's a little more challenging. You're not getting any yard waste.
Right.
So we would have to work on that.
Except
But
right now.
I see it, I'm sorry?
Except right now.
Oh, except for right now, you're correct. But I would see that it would be a small cart. Organics is going to be a little heavier for people to move around, so I would see it being a small cart. Most of our community that's really interested in composting is going to do it correctly anyways. But I would look at a pilot to start out with.
Is that something that We Care has gotten involved in? Or not?
Well, we've gone to the full-blown operation. I can tell you that, we've worked with communities, the city of Phoenix, Arizona. We were just recently at the Compost Council's annual meeting in Phoenix, Arizona, which was actually last week, and our company operates their 52,000 ton a year yard waste and food waste operation. And they did an aspirated static pile composting operation, which we were involved with managing for a little bit of time. So, yeah, I would say that we have experience in it, but I mean, from implementing anything from a pilot to a full-blown, it really just comes down to not a lot of difference between a pilot and the full-blown deal, other than the collection.
Well, thank you, welcome, and congratulations, James.
Yeah. And then, James, so for residents who want to utilize the compost, so they would just go to Domtar.
That's
and
correct.
Similar, show their ID, they'd be able to take however much for their
Yep, we would have a pile there they
garden
could
or-
take for their garden.
And then we could use it for our parks and
Tree
other
plantings.
public spaces, tree
Yep.
plantings, okay.
Yeah, that's great. Construction projects potentially as well.
Okay, nice. Commissioner?
James, congrats. thanks for your tenacity and not giving up. You've been working on this for quite some time. I'm just curious about the existing staff. I know that there aren't a lot of staff who are on site, so I'm just curious to know how will they be impacted by this change, and if they'll be absorbed into the new company or have that opportunity or other opportunities within the city.
So right now, we have a security guard that's on site. That's a contract employee that would go away.
Okay.
As far as our own existing staff, we don't have a lot of employees out there, so they're not really stationed there. They come out and push piles up, they do some other work. It's really fits into whatever the operation is at the time, but they're going to be absorbed to other work that we're doing. So there's not going to be any impact on our current employees.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, great question. All right, any other questions?
No, I'm just want to say I'm super in favor of this. I have the smallest trash can, the biggest recycling bin, and a compost bin under my sink, and that's what we want every Grand Rapidian to have, because then we're just putting the least amount of stuff into the landfill. So
Yeah.
I think this is a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight, I know James touched on this and it's in the memo, but this is really, I mean, this to me is a perfect example of triple bottom line, right? It focuses on the economic aspect. This is a business model that makes a lot of sense financially compared to what we're currently doing. It's good for the environment, and it's good for the people who live in our community who've been asking for this for a long time. This is a win-win-win, in my opinion, James. So thank you. We're eager to work with you all as a partner. And I'll turn it over to our city manager, see if there's any final questions before I call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I want to thank James and staff and our partners at WeCare for their efforts to get us to this point. I know, as you mentioned, it's been a long road, but I want to just acknowledge the discussion that took place about the curbside collection that James was responding to, that we have not had any conversation internally about operationalizing that and what resources that might take. And so I think this is to centralize the composting collection at Domtar is a very important first step. But we certainly will want to make sure that we operationalize that efficiently before we begin to explore those expansions. When I came from Austin, we had just began the residential curbside composting collection efforts in June of 2018, and we've been composting and recycling for a long time in terms of community orientation. So it is, and it wasn't for the entire community. So it is, it does take time to get there, but I think we can celebrate where we are now and get that done before we begin talking about that next step, which as a community we should do, but we certainly need a program for that.
And I think one final, that's a great point, and I'm glad you have that experience. But this also calls for a lot of education in the community. And I know we did some of that when we changed our backyard composting ordinance, but we should, I'm assuming you're working with communications around, and maybe even some of our partners like WEMAC and others to do some education in the community once this is up and off the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right, wonderful. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Commissioners, that will take us to our last item, and that is a resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider an amendment to the North Quarter Corridor Improvement District Development Plan and Tax Increment Financing Plan.
Support?
All right.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a resolution scheduling a public hearing for March 26th to consider the amended Tax Increment Financing and Development Plan of the North Quarter SID, one of your 6 SIDs, encompassing part of North Monroe, the Cheshire, and Creston business districts. The North Quarter SID was established in 2012, and as with the other SIDs, began capturing taxes and was on an upward trajectory. Changes to state law around the taxation of personal property have impacted the North Quarter SID significantly, and they have not captured any taxes for the past 3 fiscal years. Fortunately, the amended or recodified Tax Increment Finance Act allows for the SID to reestablish their initial taxable value, which will allow them to then continue on that trajectory of capturing taxes into the future. So the North Quarter SID, they've been doing good work. They have a very engaged board, and they have taken this opportunity to not only establish a new initial value, but to update their project list in their plan as well. And so they have outlined where they want to go and have established this plan for your consideration.
Great. Thank you, John. Commissioners, Commissioner Kelly, I feel like I'll turn it over to you. You serve on the North Quarter. You've been active, I think, since its inception.
That's right, and before.
And
on the steering
before.
committee. So we've been at this a long time. I'm real proud of the group that we meet faithfully, and we're doing everything we can with our with the community's private dollars to support and celebrate the district. But we're grateful for the opportunity to do a reset, because clearly we did not get what we were hoping for because of the change in state law. So thank you for your work on this, John. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? I know all of you have lots of experience on SIDS now.
Yeah.
So I think I have you all spread pretty thin on boards and commissions. All right, so with that, this will set the public hearing for March 26th at our 7 p.m. meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, thank you. All right, Commissioners, our special briefing that was scheduled for today has been canceled, so that frees up a little bit of your time today, right? I'm correct on that. It's off our schedules. I got the we do have economic development team, and then back in here tonight at 7. I know the storm is going to continue. I think we're supposed to get about this afternoon, so please drive careful, everyone. And with that, we are adjourned. City Attorney, we don't have any executive sessions, correct? No. All right. So with that, we're adjourned.